Hello, I am Jones Apau from Ghana, and I'm going to present to you a reflection on learning to teach and collaborate with emerging technologies. And as I reflect and summarize the presentation that I've watched, I'll also be making my thoughts known to you. After that, I'll tell you what I've learned and what I've planned to do. The synopsis of the presentation. Dr. Nelly welcomed participants, and she also introduced the presenter. Now the presenter took over and mentioned some people's name in the chat room. She spoke about her educational background after she mentioned the topics she was about to speak on. She also talked about her work in Russia and, in the nutshell, her working experience in general. After watching the recorded version of the presentation, I've realized that the presenter has a lot of experience on technology in the teaching and learning process. And her presentation that I watched, I've captioned them that I will discuss as we move on. How people learn. On how people learn, she said it is very important to understand how people learn. And I'm sure that's one of the most crucial things that we as educators need to have in mind. How do people learn? And I always even tell my students that learning is very difficult, and once you are at lectures and your cerebrum is not with the one who is giving instruction, you will not get anything. And I always tell them that they should make sure they pay rapt attention, and they shouldn't take it like maybe a church in a typical Christian perspective, whereby they just listen to the pastor, and after that, if you ask them what was preached on, they cannot get. So they must have that. So I agree with the presenter that we have to understand how people learn. She gave out a guessing game for participants to think about the various levels from the learning pyramid. There was a picture that she showed. She wanted participants to write down the percentage of, for instance, how much people could remember at a lecture when they read, etc. So that was what she showed. She said that research shows that students remember 5% of a lecture, which some people in the chat try to guess, 10% when they read, and up to 100% when they participate in an activity. She showed a pyramid with the broad base up to participants. She said 95% is for when learners teach each other. She asked, as teachers, what does that mean to us? If a research has shown that 100% can be retained when students participate in an activity. Now, she also asked those who were able to get the live class to type the answer in the chat box, which I even spoke on earlier. She said students learn better when they participate actively in the learning process. On 21st century course design, she said knowing how students learn influences the way we design our courses. She said she has been teaching in person and online, meaning she sometimes does the blended form. She said she worked with the content that she teaches and think how she can change it so that she can make students learn. She also said she does that by collecting information, also collect best practices, engage students in reflection, engage students in sharing information they are learning. Like, for instance, if you are a teacher and you don't try to look at the best practices, then maybe you may be teaching all kind of stuff all the time, other kind of practices that were in place previously. What is learning? And I'm sure psychologists may have done a lot of research here also, and she talk about this. Let's just go into it. On what is learning, she said in order to teach students well, you have to know what learning is. For example, she put up some rhetorical questions. Are you learning to know? Are you learning to use it? Are you learning in developing and improving yourself? Or you learn for exams? Or you learn to memorize and forget some couple of this? She said as teachers, these are all important questions that you need to find answers to. She said some people think learning is a change of behavior and that the change must result from practice or experience. She explained the definition. She spoke about other definitions of learning, and from her latest understanding of learning is unfinished. She said learning never ends, so we must be in constant search of information. She said teachers must also show that they are learning. If, for example, your student asks you a question, you don't have any idea about that, and that's your area, it may be embarrassing. So you must show to students that they are learning. I hope that's what she was trying to portray. She said, for instance, we could learn about how the brain functions. She showed a diagram on learning theories and explained it and gave her personal experience. Now, on learning and teaching, she showed a picture about the learning and teaching process and explained that, for instance, 70% should be for active learning, 20% for interaction between each other, that students should interact between each other and content, and 10% should be about giving students direct instruction. So you can see that if you are doing this, you the teacher, even you have a lot of time to research and teach students, because they'll be doing a lot of the learning on their own. She explained what teachers need to teach. She gave her experience and even mentioned emotional understanding, which she referred to Dr. Nelly as one who talked about emotional intelligence. She showed how the 70, 20, 10 percentages looks like and explained the piece. She talked about learning community in the classroom. So she was trying to look at how one can make the classroom look as a community. She talked about her experience on goal settings as a teacher and how she does it in the classroom. She showed some of her students' survey responses. She said you could introduce yourself as a teacher digitally using, for example, forum. She said she provided different tools for students to introduce themselves digitally. She said as a teacher you need to follow the 3 things about teaching. That is, you must introduce the lesson, you develop the lesson, and close the lesson. She spoke about group project in class. In addition, she talked about how her students are put into groups and how they present using, for example, Prezi. She spoke about a co-presentation with one of her undergraduate students on how to use smartboard, and there were a lot. For instance, sharing is caring. Do not be afraid of technology or change was one of the projects among projects of students she discussed with participants. Dr. Nelly came back to tell the presenter she was listening to her presentation when the presenter tried to mention her name. Dr. Nelly thanked her. Dr. Nelly talked about how to go about getting certificate of completion. They both said bye to participants. Now, inside game, what I've gained. As a professional teacher, I realized that Dr. Ludmila, that's a presenter, had a lot of experience about how to teach and how students learn. I've learned a lot, and in summary, I learned a lot on the following: how people learn the 21st course design, and what is learning and teaching. I plan to do the following: 1. Research on current practices on how students learn and help my students to learn. 2. Improve upon my online course design. 3. Learn how to incorporate the 70%, 20%, 10% design of teaching. Thank you for watching.